Welcome to the final episode of Mask On, Mask Off. I got my brother here with me, Caleb. Man,
Yes,
what's going
sir.
on, bro?
Yes, sir.
How you doing, man?
Yes, sir. I'm doing fantastic, bro. How are you doing?
Bro, I'm great. I'm like ready to finish this year off strong. Like just been recording real heavy, like heavy.
Yeah, bro. Awesome, awesome, dude. I've been seeing the stuff you've uploaded, seeing the stuff I've been listening. It's been fantastic, bro. All the stuff you've been
Ooh-wee.
sending me, bro. Oh yeah.
Ooh-wee. They're not ready. They're not
Wait,
ready.
that I read it. That I read it.
Hey man, but what have you been on? I know you just got done doing something in Texas. Like, how was that?
Yeah, yeah. So I went up to Dallas because there's the guy from SCAD. He hit me up and he was like, "Yo, like I have this production going on. It's like this worship, fellowship worship thing, and I'd love for you to be a part of it." I met him for breakfast, and he kind of explained it all to me. He was like, I feel like this generation is kind of going downhill, faith wise, and I was like, yeah, I agree. He's like, we need an example because it kind of feels ostracized to be religious or to be, to have a relationship with God. And I was like, I completely agree. And I was like, I'm only gonna do this if it works on my terms, because I was already doing a lot of stuff, but I had a feeling about this. And he was like, oh yeah, like I'm from Dallas. And I was like, okay, I can drive to Dallas. And I was like, okay, when is it though? He told me the dates, and I was like, wow, I'm gonna be in Texas those days. So
Yeah, it worked out.
lucky, yeah, man. And he was like, yeah, like I have a sign. Like I asked God, and he was like, yeah, he's the one. Like just hit him up, don't worry. And so I went up to Dallas last Thursday, and fantastic, dude. Like it was amazing. I had a very religious experience. Definitely brought me back on my feet, and sound wise, like and production wise, it was fantastic. I met this guy, Michael Scott, that's his name, and he has literally like 6 grand worth of equipment, like lights, cameras, 8 microphone stands, all the microphones. Has has a Claire, a Focusrite Claire. So he had like 16 inputs
Yeah.
and we were using all of them, bro. But it was fantastic. I think I met like 40 or so people, and a lot of them were musicians, some singers, and afterwards, I had a couple people come up to me and like, "Yo, I heard you're a producer. Like, it's kind of hard
Ah,
to,
hey, plug it
it's kind
up.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, bro." And they're like, it's kind of hard to find producers that you can have a relationship with. Most people I talk to are just kind of like, nonchalant about it. They're like, "Oh yeah, I'll get to," and so they're so hard to work with. And I was like, hey, don't worry, that's why I'm here. Don't worry. And they were
You're
insanely
definitely that
talented, man.
guy. You're definitely that
No,
guy.
thank you, bro. And I like to see kind of like like-minded people. Like, dude, I can tell right off the bat. Like when I first met you, bro, I was like, okay, this man's something different, bro.
Oh
And
man,
same thing
appreciate
for
it.
when I met Andrew, I was like, he's different. When I met Ethan, I was like, he's different. I was
Yeah.
like, these guys are gonna make an impact some way, somehow. And when I met these people, I was like, okay, this is real talent. This is real passion. This isn't just a facade. They're not just doing this. And so, and when you told me about your brand, the 725, I was like, and what you're trying to aspire to, I was like, that's it. Like that's what we need. Like trustworthy people who are passionate about design, about art. And I'm like, without the restraints, without the all the mumbo jumbo that goes with it. I was like, that's what we need. And so I'm so
Yeah.
glad that I found you. I found like-minded people. It's like that's why I feel like I'm here, is to
Yeah.
guide in the right direction. So I made a bunch of connections, and I made the first mix of one of the songs today, and I sent it to him, and I've gotten some long messages like, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe this. Like, this is gonna change the world. I'm
Oh,
like,
were they singing on it? Like you sent them a beat and then they.
oh, the production there, it was like piano, drums, guitar. It was a violinist, and we had like three. I think the most we had was like 5 singers at one time, and so we had them all mic'd up. Going into Michael's MacBook, we recorded them straight into Logic, and
What?
so
What?
yeah,
Hold,
and
hold up,
so
hold up. All those mics you're talking about, all 16 of them were running through the.
yeah,
Do
bro,
you guys have
all
the
of them,
input on
all
them?
16.
The input
Hmm.
on?
Hmm.
What, bro? What? No
Yeah, bro.
latency?
Yeah. No, no. So no latency, bro. Like, and he has like the newest MacBook with the
Oh,
M1
that's why, because he has the M.
processor.
He
Like,
has the M1. I was just saying, bro. He has to have the
yeah,
M1, bro.
bro.
Because I was like, no, ain't
No,
no
bro.
way. My computer, bro. I was just trying to
I
record
know,
earlier,
bro.
and like I put like auto tune on my bus, and I was trying to do the input,
Yeah,
and it was just too late. I was like, oh my goodness, like I can't do
yeah,
that.
bro. Yeah, yeah. And so I've noticed that, like, so because of all the plugins that I pirated over the years with my Windows laptop,
Allegedly,
I can
allegedly, allegedly,
allegedly
allegedly.
allegedly but I can't really get that with the M1, but there's no delay. Like when I record with my MIDI, like
Yeah.
it's straight on there, and so that was kind of like the same thing with his laptop. So we had literally all of the inputs filled, 16 inputs filled, and the mix was only just so they could hear themselves, so they all had monitors. Literally, he had 2 wireless in-ear monitors, and everybody else was like wired in. Like he had a 5 splitter, and so everybody was just like wired in. We had to get 11 aux extension cords,
Sheesh.
and yeah, bro, like it was the challenge, but we figured it out. Um,
So you're
and
telling me right
yeah,
now that you gave them a different cue than the one you had. So like they were hearing something different in the headphones versus what you guys were hearing.
no. So they were hearing what I was hearing, but
Okay,
the
cool.
mix that I had, like, was just so they could hear themselves. So
Okay.
it didn't sound finalized at all.
So you didn't throw
And
anything on the focal chain, like any
no, if anything, like when they needed to hear themselves more, I threw the compressor on there and turned them up.
yeah.
Same thing with like the pianos and all of that. But no, so I would pass. So we had a splitter. So I passed the headphones to like some people, and they were like, "Yo, this sounds amazing." I was like, wait,
Wait.
just wait, bro, just wait, bro, just wait. And so I finished one of the mixes today, and I had to put my magic on it. I had to put the reverb, I had to put all the color, I had to put things in the sonic plane,
Yeah,
back
got yeah,
here and all
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
and then I added some atmospheric things, like the beginning of the song. I had like what it sounded like the Garden of Eden, like with
Okay.
birds flying and all that stuff, and it at one point she says like,
Please tell me you used like some type of panning, bro. Like what?
oh, of course not. Okay, so anybody who's listening to this, there's uh, I think it's Sennheiser Amiibo, AMBEO, and it's a free plugin, and it's like it's a circle, and you could take the sound and put it
Bro,
to
I was
anywhere
literally
in there.
gonna ask you if you knew about the Logic binaural sound. Like Logic has it inside, where you don't need to
I
get
did
the.
not know that.
Yeah, bro.
I
Like
did not know that.
you just go where it says I think stereo, and you can change it, and like to like your point, it has like a circle, and you can move it. You can move the sound around, and then you can also like shift how the circle is. So let's say you can like shift the circle sideways, so now like the it's moving like as if it was like going up. It's just
Wow,
amazing, bro. Like it's supposed to
that's fantastic, bro.
represent like how we actually hear sound. I forgot what that model is like. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah,
That's fantastic, bro. Like, there's so much about Logic that I just have no idea with. But I mean, I'm here to learn it, But it's cool going back and forth through, using Logic, then throwing it into FL, and throwing it from FL into Pro Tools. Like, it's a nice workflow. It's just because I'm trying to learn all of it, and
yeah,
so I really really enjoy it. And the instruments of Logic are another level, bro. Like I'm doing
yeah,
one right now where
yeah,
the song is kind of, I wouldn't say bare, but the point of it is just to be kind of calm. I think it's just the piano, singer, and a violin. And but I was like, I need some more. Like at the climax of the song, I put in strings, and then I put in this electric piano, and then I threw in a saxophone, and then I threw in a trumpet on top of it just to give it some little accents on it. And I was like,
Yeah.
yes, but I have not been able to find a plugin that is as good as the in software in Logic.
Hey Logic, give us a check.
Fantastic.
At this point,
I
bro.
know, bro.
I've been like promoting Logic heavy, and it's like everybody who gets Logic, they know what's going on. Like shout out to our
Yeah,
people,
bro.
but even to your
For
what you were
real.
saying, I was talking to Andrew, and he was saying that like, man, like Caleb used to come into the studio and he used to like need me to kind of like help him around in Logic. Now, like the other day, he just came here and it was just beautiful to watch. Like he was just flowing through it. I was just like, yeah, I can already see it, bro. Because when you got it, I could tell, like, oh yeah, just give it
Yeah,
some
bro.
time.
Like
You'll figure it
it,
out.
it's literally like driving a car, bro. Like once you get everything down, you become one with the car, bro.
Yeah.
Like and so now I know, like A for automation, command shift E for exporting stems. Like I know all of the.
Oh, you
I'm
took
trying
the
to
time to
learn
learn the
just like.
shortcuts.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah,
Because I
I
mean,
respect it.
this it's just a fact. And then E is to open up the piano roll, like all that. Like I'm gonna come back into the studio with you guys, and you'd be like, "Yo, what?" Like there's already been
We were
times.
like, hey
There's
Caleb, how do we do this again? Like,
exactly, bro. That's literally my goal. Like within the next month, I want Andrew to be like, "Yo, show me how you did that. How show me how And I already did that whenever I did the exporting the stems, and he was like, "Yo, what? How did you do that?" I was like, "Bro, let me show you. I got you,
yeah,
bro.
yeah,
The tables have turned. Don't worry, don't worry."
right. But I feel like we got ahead of ourselves. Just see,
Yeah,
that's all
exactly.
about like sound, bro. Like people who really love sound and music, we like to nerd out. So let's
Yeah, dude.
dial back a little bit.
Yo, no, no, no. So one thing before so I, when I got to Dallas, I was the first one there, and then Michael Scott was like the next one. So he came in like an hour later, and we were going down to the gym to figure out the lights and all that, and so we walked down there, and we stayed down there for 3 hours, literally just talking like nonstop about sound, film, music, all of that, like literally just nerding out to each other, because it's very rare that you can just find people who
Yeah, bro.
understand
I
it.
swear. Uh,
So literally, like whenever I find you, Andrew, all those guys, like I'm like, these are my people. Like these are
really
my
like a
guys.
tribe, bro. Because think about it, like when I interact with other
Always.
people from other disciplines, they're always just kind of like pretty much everything in life. Everybody like pretty much clicks up, but it's super clicked up. For those who don't know, when it comes to like just art and design in general, like people like stay in their little spaces and they just know who they know and just rock with that. But like when it comes to sound people, like sound design engineers, producers, like immediately as soon as you know somebody else is as nerdy as you about sound, like it's over with. It's like, all right, yeah, we're
Dude,
cool.
it's already a connection right there, bro.
It's very I don't it's very rare that I meet somebody who's just like, or people who are kind of at odds with each other, like with everyone. Like for the most part, everybody's just like, oh, so yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, bro. Yeah,
But
bro. Like, oh, no, you go, you go. I was about to go on another tangent of another rant. We'll dial
yeah,
it back. We'll dial it back.
if you remember, come back to it. But
Yeah, I got you. I got you.
just to give an explanation to the people like who are like, why, who is he? Why is he here? Uh, well, how would you describe yourself?
So I like to I like to just start off with, I'm a music producer. That's how I kind of got into this business. But I'm trying to be a sound engineer. Um, I'm also a graphic designer. But I've also worked on films, on stuff like that. So I guess you just called me overall general as a sound designer, but graphic design is another passion that I love.
Yeah, and
That's how I
that graphic
started.
design is pretty smooth. You actually this is the individual that did the Mask On Mask Off podcast cover, and
Yeah,
to your
bro.
point, sometimes a lot of people big up themselves and or just say things about their character that is kind of just like a facade. But when you were talking about, really being on top of what you do, like even outside of producing, like I gave you the concept from the podcast, and like within, I don't even know, it was a quick turnaround. This man was up 3 a.m. sending me back and forth.
Yeah,
I'll be
bro.
like, oh yeah, I want this color, thinking like, okay, he's gonna like put into account and then go to bed. But you were sending it to me like instantly, going back to
Yeah, bro.
back. I was just like, wow. Like I knew you were on you were on your graphic design, but that really showed a lot again, just on your character and your work ethic that amazed me. I'm like, okay, like I gotta tap in with this person. Um,
Right.
where does that come
You,
from? And
you know,
always
like
been like that.
first off, you know, I it builds a trust, you know, and I feel like I do that not just with, you know, design, but, you know, with relationships as well. You know, like when you need me, like I'll be there. You know, like when you say, you know, when I make a promise, like, you know, I'll be there. And
Solid.
eh, you know, and art wise, design wise, like I look at all these opportunities, or I look at all these, you know, these opportunities that people give me as like almost in a selfish way of like, okay, I'm gonna make this the most amazing thing, so that the other person gets geeked about like what I've done, and they're like, yo, everybody, you gotta work with this dude. You
Nah,
gotta,
facts,
you
facts.
know. So whenever I have a quick turnaround, whenever I have, you know, like I also had a rapper who I was in the studio with him. Shout out Legacy. He
Mm-hmm.
um he showed me his EP, and it was very cool. Like it was music wise, it was fantastic. But there was a story concept to go with it, and I was like, we were in the studio, and I was like, yo, bro, like this song could fade into this song just like this. You know, I can have these cars going by. You know, whenever you pick up the phone here, it can be like hello, and then cut the next song. You know, and then the last song, like you can sound like, if you want it to be like, you know, girls in a you know, bunch of club girls in the car, like in a taxi, like you could have it so the song before is like on the radio, and then he
Yeah.
switches the radio, and it's the next song. And he's like, oh wow, yeah, yeah. He's like, okay, I'm gonna give you the wave recordings. You know, I'll send you the stems, I'll send all that. And I was like, yeah, for sure. And then 2 days later, I was like, here it is, bro. And he's like, oh my gosh, you know. And I was like,
Yeah.
so, and that's something that I looked up to. Like I've been listening to his music for like a year or so, you know. And so I was like, I wanted to build that relationship, and I wanted to build that trust. And so whenever he got it to me, I was like, I got you. Send it right back, you know. And so that's just the best way to because thinking about it from my perspective, like if I send a beat to somebody, you know, I'm so hyped about the beat. You know, I'm like, oh, I hope they love it. I hope they whatever they do to it, you know, all that. And if they send it to me, you know, 12 hours later, 6 hours later, I'm like, man, like they really liked it. They really respected my time. They respected, you know, the
Hey.
beat. They respected the art, you know. And so I want that connection with the other person of like when they think of me, they think, ah, oh, he respected the art. He respected what I did, you know, and I want to give that to everybody, you know. And so that's just kind of how I think about these things. And with what you sent me, the way that you laid it all out, I was like, okay, this man really cares about design. He really cares about the art of this. And I wanted to show that respect back. So whenever you were sending me the references for it, I was instantly inspired. I was like, the way that I think about it is like, you've got to build a universe, you know,
Yeah.
in all aspects of art. In film, you build a universe to lock the viewer in. In sound, you create a universe to immerse the listener in, you know.
Yeah.
But same thing with just graphic design, you know. Whenever you sent me that little world thing, I was like, that's sick. That's awesome. I could make that like a sanctuary. Like when you were describing me to what mask on, mask off was, I was like, that's amazing. That's perfect. That's a great idea. Mask
Mm-hmm.
off, where you can be your own persona. You can take off the, you know, the Instagram,
Yeah.
you know, icon persona, and just be yourself. And I was like, well, that kind of reminds me, like if I'm at like a cabin, if I'm at a cabin in the woods, you know, like when I was taking a trip with my girlfriend to Callaway Gardens, like I could just relax. I could just be me, you know. I didn't have to be Apollo. I could just be Caleb, you know. So I was like, I want to make that, but like graphically, you know. I want to make a little world where the artist feels comfortable, you know, they feel invited. And so that's kind of what I was going for with that. You build the story, and then you create the art based on the story, you know. So
Yeah, I've heard you
whatever
say
you
that before, and that was something that's always stuck with me. You're like, before you even start on the music for this concept, you need to like create the world first before you do that. I was like, because I usually do it. I have like the idea though, but I won't like actually fully flesh it out until like I start making songs and the songs are the manifestation of my thoughts, and I'm like, okay. But like
Right.
to hear that, that was interesting.
And like I think about like my favorite book of all time is 1984 by
Mm,
George Orwell, and I love it because of the setting of the environment of that world of this dystopia that people don't even realize that they're in. And I studied the world of it before I even like read the book. I was so fascinated by the world, and then George Orwell built the world, and then he gave a perspective of somebody in that world to then explain the world. It's kind of like the Godfather. Like I always use the Godfather as my example, but you know you know Francis, like he built the world of the mobsters of that, and then he introduced you to that character like with the first scene, and somebody begging for the Godfather to do this, and so you're captivated. Like, what is he talking about? What is that? But like, you don't have that unless you build the world around which those characters interact with,
yeah.
and so that's in all aspects of art. So it's cool that I feel blessed that I started in high school with film, and then I went to animation, and I went to graphic design, and I went to sound design because I learned that all of design is connected. Like
Right.
it,
Right.
it doesn't matter what art form it is. Like the basic principles are all still the same. You have to captivate your audience somehow. You have to build the world somehow. You have to build this environment. So it's like in every aspect of art, it's all just kind of the same. So that's kind of how I think about those things.
Yeah. So throughout that time, when you were going through those different disciplines, were you making music, or was music like a later thing in life?
So it's funny. When I started with film, yeah, I think it was like freshman year of high school. Uh, I had no idea like what to do, any of that. I just opened up Premiere the first time. Um, I would religiously listen to music, but I never this was also when I was just discovering hip hop as well. Like it wasn't until I was like 15, 16 when I discovered anything other than country music. Like my
Wow.
entire youth, I just listened to country music because I grew up with just my dad, and so I listened to what my dad did, and I still listen to it. It's one of the most beautiful genres in my opinion. Like but I didn't when I remember my friend Corey, shout out Corey. He showed me. We used to play 2K all the time,
Yeah.
and so they would have like Kanye's like amazing in there, and so he started getting into Kanye, and he was like, "Yo, bro, like you need to check this dude out." And I was like, yeah, for sure. And I listened to Graduation, and it just blew my mind. Like it literally like sent me into another universe of like, there's so much more to music than I even understand. Like whenever I thought of music, I thought of just like playing live instruments, playing the guitar, the piano, and all that. But Kanye kind of like opened my eyes to like there's a whole nother universe of this. There's a whole nother art form of this. And so from there, I went from like Kanye, then I went into Kendrick, then J. Cole, and I just kind of started going down the rabbit hole of that. And so around when I was doing film was when I was discovering all of this. And then I think it was sophomore junior year, no, sophomore year, I went into animation,
Yeah.
and I did my first animation, and I my first and only animation. It was like 3 minutes 30 seconds long. Like I think that was like the cutoff for the state UIL competition was like it's got to be 3 minutes and 30 seconds, or it can't be more than 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And I was like, all right, 3 minutes and 29 seconds, like right there. And
Are we talking about fully fleshed, or are we talking about stop motion?
I'll no. Like I'll send you it afterwards. It's full on. Like it took me about like probably like 9, 10 months. The only thing was I was having health complications in the midst of it, so I had to break off for a couple of months. But no, like I did the entire thing 2D. I traced everything, did all that. Like I tried to make it as pure to the art form as I could. Just a straight up, frame after frame after frame.
Yeah.
And I've that was one of the first productions that I made that I was so proud of. Like I spent months working on this, and what was even cooler is I for the final scene of it, I reached out to one of my favorite musicians, Kid Quill, and he was a small guy at the time. And I was like, hey man, like I'm a big fan. Like, could I use your song for the outro of this? And he hit me up. He's like, yeah, dude. Like, of course, I'm so honored. I'm glad that you love my music. And I was like, yo, no way. And so I used the
Yeah.
song at the end of it. And I went to UIL and didn't get past like the third round, and I was like kind of crushed about it. But you know, then I did the summer swarm at SCAD, and I was going into this, which was like you can take 2 classes during the summer
Okay.
in between your junior and in between your junior and senior year of high school. And so I took Draw 100, Design 100, and in my Design 100 class, we had a project where you
Wait,
had
did they
to
count that as
create.
credits when you finally got this guy? Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it was the full on classes. Like, but the thing was, instead of 10 weeks, they shortened it to 5 weeks. So I
Yeah.
would go every day, you know, to both classes, and I mean, it was amazing. It was a great experience. And in my design class, one of the projects was to create an alter ego for yourself. And so I created my my rapper self. Like if I was an artist, if I was a rapper, you know, and that's kind of what birthed the beginning of like my, you know, wanting to be in that culture, in the hip hop mentality. And so I drew myself in Photoshop, and you know, in this, flashy icon, way.
Yeah.
And that's what I started doing, graphic design. And I was like, yo, this is really, really cool. And I started doing more of it. I started doing like digital paintings and stuff like that. I drew Kanye, I drew Logic, I drew all those guys. And I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. It's animation's cool, but it's so difficult, it's so time consuming. And the passion wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I got into graphic design, and I was like, this is amazing. This is fantastic. I was doing the classes, doing the core classes. And, but at the time, that's when I started making music. I started making beats. I
Wow.
had actually had a friend. So I had a friend. He was like, he wanted to be a rapper, and I he hit me up one day, and like I barely knew him. He was kind of like one of the cool kids at the school, and so I was like kind of quiet. I was kind of a quiet, shy kid, and he was like, hey bro, like computers, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, you think you can make beats? And I was like, I'll try, bro. Like anything I put my mind to, like I'll do it. I'll try.
Right.
And so I made my first beat in in Adobe Premiere because that was the only
What?
program I knew. That was the only program I knew
Bruh,
how to use.
how did you make a beat in Adobe Premiere?
Dude, it was trash. I literally just used all samples. Like it was very bad. Like
Hey, but
insanely
I
bad.
respect that, because now that I'm really thinking about it, for somebody who might be in a position where they like really can't do anything, that's one of those like you can't make excuses. You just figure it out because you can.
I'll find a way.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
I
so
respect that.
and I found a way. It was probably the worst song I've ever heard in my entire life, but the dude rapped over it, and it was even worse than the beat. But it was a learning experience. And then he was like,
Yeah.
"Yo, FL Studio, like Fruity Loops, like they have a free version of it." And I was like, "Okay, like I'll dive into it. I'll see what it is." And I don't know if you've used I assume you've
The
used the free
demo where you
version of
couldn't save
FL.
it.
Yeah. So for about like a couple of months, like I just had to export everything as like stems, so because I couldn't save anything. And so I started making beats from there. And then eventually it snowballed into getting into actually buying FL, and using the plugins and learning how to not play the keyboard, but understand it enough to where I know the keys and know the notes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then so around the time of my freshman year of SCAD, like we were having the orientation in Houston. So everybody from the Houston area, like whenever they get to go to SCAD, they all bring them together, and they have like a couple. Oh, so they have a couple of alumni, and I remember I was wearing like a nice not suit, but like nice button down, nice pants, and I had my white Yeezys. I had my white Yeezys on because I just bought them,
Yeah,
and
but that boy
it was
was
a
flexing on them. He said,
oh dude, I was like,
"Formal, but I'm flexing on y'all real quick." Hold on.
you
Okay.
know it, bro. You know it, bro. And so I was walking around. Again, I was the shy, quiet kid, and so I was walking around, And there was this other guy. He's like, "Hey, bro, I like your shoes." And I was like, "Thanks." And I looked down. He was wearing the exact same Yeezys, and I was like, "Yo, no way, bro! Like, I love him." And so we talked about Yeezys, and then I was like, "Oh, so you're an alumni from SCAD?" I was like, "Oh, what do you do?" He's like, "Oh, I'm a photographer for the Houston Texans." And I was like, "Yo, what? Like, you're a photographer for my favorite team?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've been a photographer for the Kansas City Chiefs, for the Minnesota Vikings, you know." And I was like,
Hey, respect.
"Yo, no way, bro, no way." And he's like, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, graphic designer." He's like, "Oh, that's fantastic because I graduated with photography, but every place that I've been, for every one photographer, there's 10 graphic designers." And I was like, "Nice, awesome. That's exactly what I wanted to hear." And so we did, I met a couple of people and all that, and we were at the tables, and the person organizing it, they were like, "All right, so we're gonna go around the room, and you say your name and three things about you, and then after that, you say your major." And I was like, "Cool, cool, cool." Everybody did their thing, and I came up and I was like, "Hi, I'm Caleb Green. I make music in my free time. I have a label that I have a couple rappers on, and something else about music." And I was like, and I'm a graphic designer." And she was like, "Weird. Okay. Yeah, no worries. Awesome, awesome." And then afterwards, she came up to my stepmom, and she handed her card and was like, when he realizes he's a sound designer, let me know." And at the time when she told that to me, I was like, "No,
Hey, you felt
no
tried
way."
a little bit, like, wait, what?
Yeah,
What do you
I was
mean?
like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, I was like, "Nah, no way." And it turns out she was right, like 100,000% right. Like,
Yeah.
ever since, I wanted to give it a shot, and so I took my first sound design class, and that's where I met Andrew. And
Shout out Andrew. Shout out
yeah,
Andrew.
shout out Andrew, man, like the homie, the man, like love that guy. But that first sound design class, like there was a couple of things that he said that like just hit me, and I was like, "Oh wow, yeah, yeah." There's so much more to this. There's so much, and he was going on, and I was just so fascinated. I was like glued to my screen. I was like, "Yes, like this is it. This is what I was here to be. Like this is what I need to do." And that's ever since then, I was like, "This is what I meant to do," and God has pointed me in the right direction, and
Facts.
couldn't have been more grateful, man. Like it was a broken road, but the road led me to where I needed to be, and every step of the way, like it taught me something. It taught me this, it taught me that, the animation, graphic design, like it all comes together, and there's a reason for all of it. And you kind of just got to sit back and let God take the wheel and let him drive for a while, and you're like, "Okay, yeah, I like where you're sending me."
Yeah, at
So
first you gotta like, wait, whoa, whoa, what? Not that turn. Wait, no, no, no,
yeah,
no, no. I know the turn's right there.
yeah.
Hold on, hold on. Nah.
Right away he's like, "No, no, no,
Yeah.
let me drive, let me get it, bro." So yeah,
Right.
like it was a long, complicated road, and but I had this conversation with somebody while I was in Dallas, and I was like, it's funny though, like when I look back on my childhood, like it was always kind of there, like my love for country music, like I I realized that I loved music more, like my base level of loving music was like way more than anybody like messed with music before, like if I'm right here, like everybody's like down here, like I would go to as many concerts as I could, I had an MP3 player with me all the time, I would be singing even though I could not sing, and I just and like my favorite types of music now, like my favorite country music singer back then, Kenny Chesney, like he's a very like kind of rock, guys. He has a lot of electric guitars, a lot of pianos, a lot of like kind of like sound design in his work. And when I listen to him today, I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. Like why he was my favorite,
Yeah.
and I always tell this story of like, me and my dad grew up like very, very poor, and it was just me and him, and we would have the box TV, and literally until I was like, you know, 14, 15, like we had a giant box TV, but we would have a nice Sony stereo system, and he would have the stereo around the house. So every time we were watching NASCAR, like you could hear the cars going by, swinging by, and
Yeah.
then we'd go out into the driveway to go play basketball, and we'd have a nice stereo sound setup, and then I remember for my 16th birthday, my dad got me speakers in my 95 Ranger. And at the time I was like, "Bro, what are you doing? Like this is a beat up old truck. Like I just want a nice radio. Like I don't need all that fancy speakers. And he's like, no, no, you
He's,
need it. Like trust me. He's like
yeah.
that's what matters. And I was like, yeah, whatever.
Shout out to
And I had
Pops.
this. Yeah, for real. I already told him this story 2 days ago, and he was like, "Yeah, I noticed that you seemed a little disappointed when I got you those speakers." And I was like, "No, man. Like, I was at the time, but like ever since that day, like sound has been revolutionary, and I always go into my truck to listen to things. You know, like when I'm driving down a highway at 70 miles an hour, I roll all the windows down and turn the speakers up. Like I all I need is a Bluetooth input, and that's it. Like I need some nice speakers. Anybody who gets in my car, it's like, man, these speakers are amazing. I'm like, my dad, he always had an ear for sound,
Yeah.
and I never really realized it. It's just kind of like how I grew up. But looking back, I'm like, it was always in front of me. I just never really realized it. So, and I have a couple of friends who are, they're doing community college. They're kind of struggling, and he's like, I'm doing a business major, but I'm in my third year, but I don't know what to do with it. I'm not in love with business. He's like, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about being a nurse. I'm like, bro, like, why do you want to be a nurse? He's like, well, they make a lot of money. I'm like, bro, that's not the point. I'm like, that's not the point of gaining education. That's not the point of like, gaining talent is not to just make money. It's to fulfill what you love. I'm
Yeah.
like, think about your childhood. Think about what you love doing. And I always heard somebody say like, the old saying is like, what would you do with $1 million? It's like, no, no, no. What would you do if money wasn't a thing? Like if it was
Yeah.
out of the equation, what would you do? And so I sat back and I thought about it. I was like, I love music. I love doing this. I love sound, and that's what my calling is. And so my dad has always said like, you know, I remember being in the driveway. So I played basketball my entire life. You already know this, but
Yeah.
I played
And that,
basketball
and that
my
man can
entire
hoop
life.
for real. It's not cap. He can really hoop.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, bro. So I played basketball my entire life, and my dad loves basketball. He was playing on the high school teams and all that, and
Yeah.
but he never went more than that. And so at some point I was like, am I doing basketball for me, or am I doing it for you? And I remember I was like 12, 13 years old, and I was like, man, like I want to do art. And he was like, he was like, yeah, man, whatever you want to do, like I will help you do it. Like what I don't care what you do as long as you become the best at it. Like you put your heart into it, put your passion into it. I will help you every step of the way. And he has. And so when I came to music, everybody tells me like it's hard. It's a hard business. It is. You're leading you nowhere. You're not gonna get anywhere. And I'm like, I'm gonna be the best at this. Like I don't care what nobody says. Like
Facts.
I'm gonna be the best. Like I'm gonna learn everything I have to do. And I had people tell me like, oh, you don't need to learn that. Like it's not essential. It's not that. And I'm like, I don't care. Like even if I get like this much higher than the next person, like it's a step up. Like
Right. Right.
in basketball terms, like LeBron doesn't stop practicing. Durant practices every day. He practices dribbling, his shooting, because if he decreases his talent by this much, that means he goes from like the number 3 player in the nation to maybe somewhere mid in the NBA, because it's just a half a percent, but even that half a percent means something. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I put that in every aspect of my life. That's why that's why I switched over to Mac, because I did not want to switch over to Mac like at all. But going into the studios, everybody uses Mac, everybody uses Pro Tools, and I'm like, God, I'm gonna have to do this. Like someday, I'm gonna have to do this. So I might as well start now while I'm young, still learning things. Like might as well get used to them. So anything that could put me to an advantage over the next person, like that's what I need to do in every aspect of that. So I want to learn the keyboard. I want to learn the programs. I want to learn every instrument I can, because that's what's going to equip my arsenal.
Yeah.
So
And you just have more
I feel
fun,
like,
bro. Like,
yeah,
man,
exactly.
I get so uh, a, a little flustered when I hear people talk about music and then claiming to love music in terms of like the producer community, and then they'll say things like, "Oh man, like you don't have to know about music theory, or you don't have to know chords. Just like get packs, buy loops."
Right.
I'm like, That's cool, bro. But at a certain point, that just becomes like computer programming, and you can make some cool stuff from just computer programming. But like, imagine
Right,
when you know how to like really play the keyboard that's connected to your computer,
right.
or you can pick up a guitar and really know how to play what you want to play instead of like spending hours trying to take what someone else is able to do. You have more
Right.
fun and you have
Yeah.
more control with what you're doing. So I'm glad that you feel that way, bro, and keep on
You know,
applying pressure.
I knew I needed to learn the piano whenever when I was making music with you and Andrew, and you know I think my specialty are drums because that's a whole lot easier to program than like playing the keyboard. And so I'd lay some drums down, and Andrew would come up and be like, he'd instantly just play something, and I'm like, yo, that would have taken me so long to do. And I was like, that's what I need to do. I need to learn that, you know?
Yeah.
And then eventually you become to a point where you're fluent. You're fluent in this, you know. It's kind of like writing a book, you know, like you can read other books and like rip pages out and paste and create your own book just from cutting other pieces of paper and everybody else's book. But when you know the language, when you can manipulate it, when you can learn how to, learn the analogies, learn the metaphors, learn all this, like the different literary devices and all that, it's like, then you can craft your own book, your own universe. It's like, then you don't have to be reliant on other people. You don't have to be reliant on all those things, you know? And I was having this thought of like, somebody told me about, about life, a lot of people kind of feel lost and all this stuff. And if everything went away tomorrow, like if an EMP dropped tomorrow, if a
He
solar
said if I
flare,
EMP.
dude, if a solar flare hit the earth right now, what would you do? Like, what are your talents? What do you know? You know? And I was thinking, bro, like I can't make music without my FL Studio, bro. Like I don't know what I'd be able to do. So I'm like, okay, that's my crutch. That's where I need to get over it. I need to learn how to play the piano. I need to learn how to play the guitar. I need to learn how to, do all this stuff because, at the end of the day, when I'm 75, I want to be able to bring my grandkids out on the porch and just playing some Johnny Cash on my guitar. It's like that's much more impressive than just like, hey kids, listen to this beat I made, and like pulling up FL Studio and be like, listen to this, because at the end of the day, like all you have is your conscience. All you have is your knowledge, all the things that
Yeah.
you've learned over your life, And if everything I've learned is shortcuts and how to chop up things, it's like that's cool, but that I'd much rather my talent be physical in the physical realm like that. So I
Yeah,
kind of try to
I just
approach
want to make
that.
it crystal clear that like to all producers, musicians who program drums and whatnot, hey, we love you and we're doing the same thing. So this is not one of those
That's
like,
me, bro.
yeah, say
Straight up.
we
Like I'm
are
still
you.
that guy.
We're just
Yeah.
saying that learning instruments is also key. You know what I'm saying
You know,
to
and
like
and another key to that is like what I want to learn more is the art of sampling. Like the
yeah
way that Andrew does it, he finds records, put them down, and spins that and then rips that. I'm like, that is amazing. My girlfriend's grandparents came into town and they were asking her like, oh, he does music. Oh, that's cool. Like, what does he do? And she was like kind of trying to explain it, and I was like, and we're about to go to dinner with him. I'm like, yo, I hope they don't ask me what I do. Like, I don't want to have to explain what sampling is because
yeah
like to somebody who's like 60 or something, they're like, oh, so you steal other people's music and turn it into your own. I'm like,
it's
no, not really. Like,
you can't even
that's
explain
not
it.
really
You
what it
gotta
is
show it because when you
for real.
explain it like that, it sounds like that. But when you play it, there's no way. Like I just feel like you have to lack a certain amount of intelligence to like hear something that's been sampled very well and hear an original and be like, oh yeah, that's just a rip off. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right. And so my dad was kind of the same way when I started making music. He was like, oh, so that's somebody else's thing. And I was like, listen. I'm it's kind of like if I took the Mona Lisa, and I cut out the background, enlarged it, and then painted my own masterpiece. with it. I sampled the colors, and I did my own thing. I'm like, and the way I explained to this, I'm like, think about a piano. You hit it, it makes a sound. All right. But what you do with that sound is different for everybody. You
Right.
can do different chord progressions. You can do all of that. So there's nothing different from this piano sound than somebody else's piano sound. Like when I'm going through samples, I usually use piano sounds and all that. But like that's because it has that nostalgic, authentic quality than if I just played it on here. So at the end of the day, it's an audio recording. Like no matter if it's an electric piano or if it's a sample of an acoustic piano, like they're just waveforms. So what I do with the waveforms is the magic. It's like anybody could sample, but like what you do with the samples is how you build your art type
Right.
thing. So that's kind of how I try to word it to people. And then I show them Mob Deep, and I showed them that beat, the Shook Ones Part 2. I'm like I show them the original song, like what they sampled it from, and then I showed them the beat, and they're like, oh wow, okay, yeah, this is different. This is something else.
That's what I'm
And then
saying,
my
bro.
what
Like it's really not that hard to grasp. I'm telling you, it's not. Like
right,
certain songs, like when we start getting nitpicky and we start talking about like the Jay Dillas, bro, you hear the original record and it's like you can't look me in my eyes and tell me like, oh man, I can do that. It's like, okay, do it. Like let me see
right,
you do it. Like
yeah,
there's
exactly,
people who are pros at sampling, like they're just efficient and they still can't get the
yeah,
same chops that JD did. So it's like,
yeah,
yeah, to
man,
your point, is that's what this culture, that's what we love, bro. Is like certain producers, like, man, like the way he just does sample, like any sample he gets, the way he does with it or she does with it is like, whoa, whoa.
yeah, man. Yeah, bro. Yeah, shout out Ninth Wonder, because he is my inspiration. Like that's what I want. That's the level when I get to. I see those. I forget what the things where it's like where he blindfolds himself and picks records and all that, and
Oh, rush the
he
the
put
the rhythm roulette.
that's what it was. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And he'll just pull the most insane beats out of it. And I'm like, yo, how are you able to just find just obscure sample? I think he sampled like a country record, and made it sound soul, and chopped it up. And I'm like, that is to another level of mastery, and that's another instrument that I want to learn is that art of sampling, and I want to make the 5 beats a day for 3 summers type thing, and I want to do what Andrew's doing is and having an actual record player and sampling records, because there's an authentic quality to the analog. Like I get most of my beats just from deep diving into YouTube and finding playlists and
Wait,
finding
so you don't have a
obscure
record player?
things. I do not in Houston, but I do in
Oh,
Savannah.
okay. I'm about to say I could have
But
sworn I was at the studio. I saw.
yeah, I do. But it's a very expensive hobby to get into, and
Yeah,
Andrew can
facts,
definitely tell you about that. Like,
facts.
going to the dollar bins, every week and picking out 20 records, like doesn't seem like much. It's just $20, but when you do that every week for a year, like that's a lot of money. That's what is that? $80 a month. Like that's essentially a subscription.
I was about to say that's a
Like
subscription, but I feel like that's
exactly.
one of those things when we talk about investing in yourself. If that's your lane, then it's definitely totally worth it. I think so.
Exactly.
It doesn't even have to
Exactly.
be 20. It could be 10 one week. It could be 5 one week. One
Right.
you might have 10 or 20 for that one week. You There's no way you can sit and be like, oh yeah, I flipped 20 records every way possible within a week. It might take you a whole month to build
Exactly.
that 20.
Right. Yeah. And that's also something that I've learned recently is to invest in your craft. Like, before, if I could find a free way to do it, like I'm gonna do it that way because I'm a college student, bro. Like I'm already short on the funds.
Yeah,
But
facts.
now but now I'm buying the plugins. Now I'm buying the nice keyboards. Now I'm buying the record players, the records. It's like this is when it gets serious. This is what separates me from the people who hit me up in my DM like, yo, I've always wanted to do music. I just got into FL Studio, and it's like you've been doing this for a month, dog, and next month you're gonna be off of it. Like that's what it's kind of like that, the passion and the dedication to it. It's like, all right, are you willing to take your money and put it into your craft? It's like
Yeah.
that's the next level to it, you know. So
I like what you said about even when we were talking about the premiere, it's just kind of like sometimes you're in positions where you need to just figure out what you have, like get it how you live. You might be in a situation where you really don't have it to go out and get records, but the blessing is there's YouTube, there's Tumblr, there's so many different sources of just like getting to records, and that's a
yeah, man.
beautiful thing. Like even records that we've already heard that have been sampled, there's so many different ways to flip the same thing again. Like the piano, there's the same, it's the same number of notes that's been
Yeah,
around for centuries, but it's just like how do you combine it, how do you take certain things, or maybe you might reverse things, so
right. Yeah, and you know, I was talking to Andrew, and I was kind of upset because like switching from FL to Logic, or I don't have all my plugins, I don't have all that, and he's like rules are what create, like the rules are what create, help spontaneity, what help creativity, because when you're limited you need to find a way.
yeah,
And
I agree.
one of my producer homies, Vig, he's the guy who got a placement on Logic's last album,
Mm-hmm.
and he only uses, like, the only plugins he uses are like sound toys, and like that's the only things and plugins he uses. Everything else is really just him on the keyboard, him doing this and that. And I'm like, and he's like, yeah, like it helps my creativity, like that limits myself, so I must force myself to think outside the box. I must force myself to to learn this craft, to learn the keyboard, to learn all this stuff. And I was like, good point, bro. Like that's something I need to start doing. Is limitation spawns creativity. I
Yeah.
was like, makes sense. you know
And
yeah.
we really been talking about a lot and a lot, dropping a lot of gems. But just to cut out, what would you want to say to the people listening? Like word of advice, or just whatever's on your spirit. What do you want to say?
Bro, if there's a will, there's a way. you know and I tell everybody this, like, if you got a passion deep inside, if you got a passion, bro, you have to jump in. Like, for the longest time I was afraid of Photoshop. I was afraid of I'm still afraid of Pro Tools. But it's like, if you want to learn how to swim, you gotta jump in.
Right.
Like there's no other way. Like, and the thing is, when you're riding a bike, you're gonna fall. Like, you're gonna fall, you're gonna crash, you're gonna scrape your knees, but eventually you're not gonna. Like, eventually, you gotta learn how to fail, so you learn how to win. Like, the man who's never failed has never tried. So
Yeah.
everything that I'm afraid of, like, I have to jump into it, because there's no other way to learn things than experience. To master something, you have to master something. You need 10,000 hours. I've always said that, but you have to start at hour one. When I'm out in the driveway
Mm.
with my little sister, like, she's playing basketball, and she's not so good at dribbling, and so she's like, yo, can you help me with some dribbling, like, practices and lessons? And I was like, yeah, for sure, for sure. And I'm like, dribble two balls up and down 25 feet, you know. And she's like, okay. I'm like, do that 10 times. And she goes, okay, okay, yeah. I'm like, okay, so you're gonna have to do that 10 times every single day for the next 3 years. She's like, what? Why? And I'm like, because I think Bruce Lee has a quote where, I don't fear the man who's practiced for 10,000 hours, or who's practiced fighting for 10,000 hours. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody can get that down and nail that kick, like, that's a dangerous man.
Right.
I heard that I always make this analogy to my sister. I'm like, Kyrie Irving, like, used to sit out in his driveway and put plastic bags over his basketballs and dribble two balls like that. Like, he would go in between the legs, behind the back, like, and she's like, well, why do I have to do that? I'm like, because you have to get to that next level. If you can do that with plastic bags over the balls, it's like, imagine what you can do without them. Imagine when you have that grip, So
Yeah.
it, I see this with literally everybody, because there's something that everybody wants to get into, wants to learn, but they're afraid, and I can relate. Like that's how I am right now with Pro Tools. Like it's terrifying, but you have to force yourself to jump in, because once you do, you'll be like, thank God I did, because thank God I learned Pro Tools at the time, because I was just in the studio last week, and the rapper was like, yo, like we're not purchasing the studio time with an engineer. Like, do you guys know how to use Pro Tools? And I was like, hey, I do now, bro. Like,
Yeah.
I know my way into it. And that's because I had to jump in. I had to force myself into it. I was like, I got to find a way. If I want to be in the studios, I have to be able to learn the software that the studios use.
Right.
Another cool thing, off tangent. I was in the studio with Legacy, and it's in the studio, like right outside of the 610 Loop in Houston. And the mother studio is where Don Tolliver used to go all the time, and that's where he got signed. Like the head of the studio like brought Don Tolliver in, and he brought an A&R in, and the A&R walked into the meeting. He came up to Don. He's like, how many songs do you have recorded? And Don was like, 200. He was like, okay, thank you. And he left. A&R left, and then a week later he got signed. Because you realize, like, if somebody's practiced that, if you have 200 songs recorded and finalized, that probably means that you've written 1,000, 2,000 songs. Like, he's put in his 10,000 hours.
Facts.
Like he and so that kind of like made me think, and I was like, if a record label or someone comes up to me and was like, how many beats do you have? How many beats are you proud of? And I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, I'm like, probably got like 25 beats that like I would want to sell, that I would want to, sell to a label or something like that. I'm like, I have to make that 200. I have to make that 300. I have to make that as much as I can, because that's what's going to put me over the next guy. Not only that, but that's how I put in my 10,000 hours, you know? And another cool thing is, at that studio, that's where Travis Scott learned auto-tune.
What?
I was like,
The mother studio or the
yo,
studio you were at?
the mother studio, which was like a couple minutes down the road, but and I was like, yo, that's crazy. So I was like, okay, so definitely being a sound engineer is the way to go, because you're,
Facts,
dude,
facts.
you are the guy that the rappers need. You're the guy that the producers need. So when you can fly through Pro Tools without even using a mouse, you're just doing on the 400 shortcuts, and you're just flying through it. They're like, wow, I need that guy on my team. Like, I need that guy. And then you gain that trust, by sending them their beat, they're sending them their record back 12 hours later, 6 hours later, and they're like, man, this is fantastic. Then you go, hey, bro, I also make beats. So listen to
Bro,
this.
I've heard so many stories, and like I actually know a guy who got in a situation where he ended up signing a deal, and that's what he did. He was like engineering for people, but he just had beats. And like obviously us, we always tapped into different podcasts and things of that nature, and you keep hearing that it's like, if you don't end up like putting in the practice and you're hearing it from so many different people, then I don't know, because
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
really true. The engineer is the closest person to the to the artist, and a lot of producers
Right.
send their beats through engineers, and that's how they end
Mhm.
up getting placements. So
Yeah, man. And that's how my homie Vig like got his record on, or got his beat on Logic's last album, because he was homies with his sound engineer, who was also his producer. So he sent him the sample, and it was like, yo, this is fire. He sent it to Logic, and Logic made a beat out of his sample. And I'm like, yo, that's crazy, man. And another thing is, like, study, study how, the people that you look up to. And the guy I look up to most is Kanye. And I'm like, okay, how did Kanye get into the position he did? By doing the 3 beats a day or 5 beats a day for 3 summers. But then from there, he got into the studio. And he was saying, like, he's the shy type. He didn't speak out very much, but he was like, there was some song, and maybe it was an interview, where he was talking like, Jay-Z was in the studio and he was so afraid to talk to him, you know. But if you're in the studio with Jay-Z, you can't tell your homies that you were in the studio with Jay-Z and didn't talk to him.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's not as impressive to be like, yo, I was in the studio with him. And they're like, okay, cool. So what'd you say to him? You're like, I didn't say anything. You know, I didn't, you know, but then he introduced himself. He made that relationship. He showed him the beats and, you know, Hard in the City, you know, like all those beats. He's like, oh, wow, this dude is a prodigy. Like he is fantastic. He has the vision, you know? And then he was like, yo, like I also rap. So he'd show him his beats and then rap over his beats. And he's like, oh, wow, you know, this kid's got something, like, you know? And so it's like, it's every little step, you know, you got to get your foot in the door, but you got to find a way to get your foot in the door. And then when you got your foot in the door, then you open that door as wide as possible and you run through that hole. Like you gotta find a way, bro. You know, it's like what's a door good for if you're not gonna walk through it? You know, it's like you gotta take advantage of every single opportunity that you're given. You know, and that's why whenever people hit me up for graphic design, for sound design, for producing, I'm like, yes, I'll do it. It's probably I'm gonna stay up late and I'm gonna lose some sleep and it's gonna suck, but I'm gonna make that relationship. And then from there, somebody's gonna recommend me to the next person. I did the thing in Dallas because I had somebody I was in class with, and I did a video for them, and they were like, "Oh wow, the sound is really good on that." And then you know, William was asking people around, like, "Does anybody know any sound guys?" And she was like, "I know the guy. Like, I know him. I worked with him. Like, you know." And my dad has always said, like, you know, life is a contact sport. Like, you need contacts. You know, like you got that's the only way that you progress in this world is to build contacts and to build the people you know. You know,
Oh.
and I met you through Andrew, you know, and I met Andrew through these classes, and eventually, you know, he reached out to me, and it was funny. He reached out to me literally the same day I was planning to reach out to him, you know. So it's like, it's all about the people you know, bro. You know, and so many of these things that I know is because I've had experience with these people, and they reach out to me because they've had experience with me, you know. So my message to anybody listening to this is contacts. Like meet as many people as you can because you never know, and treat them as humans, bro. Like, you know, when I was in Dallas, like I didn't know any of these people. You know, I didn't know what they came from, what they're doing. You know, these people had an amazing voice, and I was like, awesome, people with an amazing voice. And there was this one girl, and she was singing, and she had a little voice crack, but like I was listening to it, and I didn't even hear it. I didn't hear it at all. And she was like, "Okay, we got to restart. You got to restart." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, no worries." And I mentioned it to one of the girls. I was like, you know, she was doing perfect, and she was like, just, you know, stop out of nowhere. And she's like, "Well, it might be because she has like quite a large following that like she's kind of worried that people are gonna like nitpick and like call her out for it." I was like, she has a large following, really? And I went to her Instagram. She's got like 100,000 followers. I was like, whoa. I was like, oh wow, that's crazy. Like, it's weird that I met her just thinking as she was just a normal everyday person. You know, like
I mean,
that's how
she
you have to
is.
meet these people. You know, and exactly like when
Yeah.
you, I always hear like when you meet celebrities, when you meet people like that, they just want to be treated as a normal person because that's what they are. They don't, you know. Logic always has that thing where it's like every time I meet somebody, they're just like fanboy and just like I can't ever get a word in because they're just like, oh, you know, this and that, you know. It's like, all right, you know, like, call me Bobby, you know, call me Mr. Hall, like, you know, like treat me as a normal person, like that's what I want, like that's like an outlier, you know. It's like if I do go into the studio and I run into Don Tolliver, I can't freak out. I can't freak out, you know. I'd be like, hey, Mr. Tolliver, what's up? What's good?
Yeah.
You need some
he
mixing
said
done.
he
Like
said
I got
Mr.
you.
Tolliver.
You know,
Donnie.
so hey, daughter, but you know, like just contacts, jumping in, diving in, like
Yeah.
being aggressive. You know, like that's what my dad always told me in basketball. Is like the only way you're gonna shine is if you're aggressive. You know, if you can shoot, that's great, but you got to hustle for that ball. You know, if you want the ball in your hands, you got to get it. You got to go earn it. You know, and that's with everything in life. Like, you know, if you want to meet people, you got to be aggressive about it. Something that I admire about Ethan is he's very outgoing and can meet people easily. He told me a story where he would just like, if he doesn't know anybody, he'll just go up to a random table and sit down and be like, "Hi, I'm Ethan. Who are you guys? Like, what's your names? You know, what do you do? What all that?" So it's like you have to be aggressive in life to get these opportunities, to put your foot in the door, to meet people. It's like if you want to get to where you want to go, you have to get it. You can't just sit back and wait for it to happen because it's not going to. You know? But you gotta put your faith in it, gotta put your passion in it, and you gotta trust that like God's gonna put it in front of you, but He's not just gonna put it. He's not gonna put it in front of you if you're sitting still. You gotta run. You gotta jog after. You gotta go for it.
You go put that deer there, but you gotta go. You gotta go get that kill. Gotta go handle it.
Exactly, bro. Exactly, dog. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know? So that's the key, bro. Be aggressive. It's contacts. Dive in. You know, nothing's easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. You know.
I'm about to. Hey, shout out to your dad because I'm about to use that as my quote for this year and next year. Life is a constant.
Yeah, bro.
I like that.
Yeah, bro. My dad is the king of analogies, bro. Like he is the reason why I am the man I am. You know, like I love him so much, and he's taught me so many valuable lessons. You know, about life, business, money. You know, contacts, about art that he didn't even know that he was giving me, but I applied them to art, and I was like, oh, this makes sense. You know, all these little things in life, he's right about. You know, so he's really the man. Like he's given me every opportunity. He's let me in the driver's seat, and he's helped me along the way. You know, and I couldn't be more thankful, bro. Like, he is the man. He is the most amazing man.
Shout out to him, and I'm extremely thankful for you pulling up, my boy. You might got to get another one for sure. Maybe.
Yeah, for sure, bro. Yeah, man.
Yeah, and y'all be on the lookout. We might have something special for y'all soon. Sooner.
Oh, you already know it, bro. You already know it, bro. You already know it, bro. There's something in the vault.
Episode 7, closing out. Great season. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Caleb.
Yes, sir. Of course, bro. Of course. Anytime.